All right. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. First, I want to introduce myself. This is Runaway Wednesday. Thank you for joining us. I am Kim Temple, and I'm the broker of Runaway Realty here in Puerto Morelos, which most of you, I think, are interested in Puerto Morelos or have at least been to Puerto Morelos, a fan of Puerto Morelos. So we are going to talk generally tonight about moving to Mexico and how you own property here, but we're primarily focused on Puerto Morelos. So just to get that out of the way. And I am joined tonight by some amazing people on my team. Austin Lee, say hi.
Hello.
And Danny Trava is here. And they work with me in the office. And I think Laura's going to join us a little bit later, who also works with us in marketing. So I guess, quick little bit of background. Oh, and we're joined by some people who already live here. Quite a few, actually. Caroline Gallegos, who is the #1 wing woman. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. And then Donna, I don't know if she's unmuted.
Hello, I'm here.
Donna's here. Also another longtime Puerto Morelian. And then Rhonda and Daniel, who bought 2020, no? 2021.
2022.
2022. The years since COVID have all melted together for me. Yeah, so thank you guys so much for taking time out to join us. And Runaway Wednesday was really our pivot. When COVID happened, we have a program called Moving to Mexico Monday, where we would meet in person once a week during high season with people who are interested in buying and just finding out the information about owning property in Mexico and about living in Puerto Morelos. So we did this in-person program, which was really fun and popular. And then we had to stop meeting in person because of COVID. We pivoted to Zoom, started Runaway Wednesday, and realized we really like it on Zoom because we can dig so much deeper into some of these other topics, and spend a little more time on that. So that's what we're doing tonight. We are recording this meeting. So if you're not interested in being on the recording, you would just have to turn off your camera. I think during the chat, if you can mute your microphone, that's great, so we don't get any background noise. But we do have a chat box down here. Say hi. If you want to put questions in there, or I'm going to stop every 5 to 10 minutes to take questions. So yeah, I'm not going to drone on for an hour and then ask for questions. This is going to be interactive. If we can keep it a little smaller, it'll be great. Just asking these people to unmute if they want to. All right. Now I feel a sneeze coming on, excuse me. Oh, I think I stopped it. All right, well, I guess we'll just get started. We oftentimes people come in the office and their first question or their first statement is, we don't think that we can own property in Mexico. And many people believe that to be true even to this day, and you still see all this misinformation online about it. So the very first thing that we want to tell you is, yes, you can own property in Mexico as a non-Mexican citizen. You have always been able to do that, and many other Americans and Canadians and people from around the world own property in Mexico. So that's the good news. Probably the reason why you've heard that foreigners can't own property in Mexico is that the Constitution of Mexico does prohibit foreign ownership of land along its borders, 100 kilometers from a land border and 50 kilometers from a sea border. And historically that made total sense because Mexico had been invaded and had wars from other countries coming in. So it made sense that they had this prohibition. Back in the 70s, the government decided, we now want to encourage foreign investment and foreign ownership, especially along these sea borders, which are these beautiful beach areas. And so we are going to create a vehicle to allow for foreign ownership without changing our Constitution. To change the Constitution is, like in other countries, is kind of a huge endeavor. They weren't quite ready to do that. So they created an asset trust called a fideicomiso. And foreigners are allowed to, well, let me back up. This area where foreigners can't own is called a restricted zone. So they created this trust called the fideicomiso, which actually is a word that just means trust. And this trust is specifically to allow foreigners to own property along in the restricted zone. So the trust is not, it's not a sneaky way to own. This is the way the government said, hey, we foreigners, we'd like you to invest and here's how we'd like you to do it. So the trust is a different kind of ownership than your people are used to, and sometimes it feels strange. People hear it and they think, oh, I don't think I like that. The reality is it's no different from, it's actually a little bit more secure actually than getting a mortgage loan on your property. Because when you have a trust, you're the primary, well, usually it's a couple or partnership. There's usually two people as primary beneficiaries on the trust. Within the terms of the trust, you can name secondary beneficiaries, and a Mexican bank is the trustee of the trust, the administrator of the trust. The administrator of the trust, unlike a mortgage lender, has no interest in your property. They can't borrow against it, they can't loan against it, they can't enter it. They have no right to control what happens on the property. They are merely an administrative function that frankly sends you a bill once a year, maybe, if they remember. So the fideicomiso, the trustee bank, has really nothing to do with your property. You're still required to have it. So when a foreigner is buying, we set up a trust or we transfer a trust if you're buying from another foreigner. But it's, in practical matters, it has no bearing on your ownership. You can build, tear down, lease, rent, do whatever you want to with your property. There's no limit to your ownership. The only limit is that when you sell your property, you're going to instruct the trustee bank to either transfer to another foreigner if you sell to a foreigner, or if you sell to a Mexican citizen who doesn't need a trust, you'll extinguish the trust. The trust lasts for 50 years, after which time it's automatically renewable for another 50 years. The only way that it is not renewed is if you've been convicted of a federal crime involving the property, then the country can opt not to renew the trust. I have not heard of that happening, but the process to renew the trust happens kind of automatically. The beauty of the trust is that you've already designated your secondary beneficiaries in there, so you don't have to worry about your heirs getting caught up in a foreign probate court. You don't have to have a will in Mexico. Your property is completely controlled by this trust, by the terms of the trust. You can change the beneficiaries at any time. Of course, the bank's going to charge you to do that. But it is a very safe way for foreigners to own property and not worry about ending up in court in some kind of battle over their property when they pass away. What else can I tell you about the trust? Maybe this is a good time to stop and see if anyone has questions about the trust. Nobody? Not one question? Okay. Let's see, trust lasts for 50 years. I went over that. The part of, well, I'll get to that later. Excuse me. The other kind of, you know, the two big things that I hear why people are worried about buying property is that they think they can't own the property, and they also there's this like feeling that the Mexican government can come in at any time and take your property away from you. And this is something that is kind of a, sadly, a theme that you've seen, and this has kind of been like an, I don't know what it's called, like an old wives' tale or something from back in the, actually also in the 70s, when a developer developed on land that's called ejido land, which is in a similar term would be like tribal land in the US, which is owned by a tribe. Here it's owned by a ejido, which is similar to a tribe and independent. An American developer developed on ejido land, sold some very high-end property to people and completely defrauded them. And in the end, the tribe won and they had to move them off. Because of that very high profile event, Mexico got a terrible reputation, but it wasn't even a Mexican developer that defrauded all of these people, it was an American. So that story has kind of lasted, it's been a stain on the reputation of Mexico for many, many years. Then a few years ago, I can't remember if this was before COVID, but there was a very high profile, I mean, the New York Times covered it. There was a hotel in Tulum that had been built on ejido land, same thing. In that case, the hotel was being built. There was an objection because it was ejido land from the very beginning. They went ahead and built, kept it tied up in the court. I kid you not, 20 years. Appealing. They lost at every level. They were allowed to keep appealing. They had possession of the property. Finally, in a very dramatic and unfortunately well-publicized way, the Mexican government had to come in and like remove them from the property physically. And then there was, oh, this is horrible. The government just showed up and threw us out. No, you lost at every level of the court and wouldn't leave the property. And so, yes, eventually you had to be removed and you did not advise your guests that this was happening. So it was really horrible and it shook up a lot of people, including myself. I mean, it was a horrible thing to hear about, but when you dig into these horror stories, you sometimes find that somebody just wanted to make a lot of money and knew that they could tie it up in court. And so that is a little bit frustrating. So, so if you hear that, that's not true. What they can do is, for example, for the Mayan train, which is coming into this area and really changing kind of the landscape here, your property could be condemned. They could exert eminent domain, which has another name here, but you get paid for your property. I mean, highway down the coast where there's already beachfront homes, but it is something that has happened recently. They've taken some land out in the jungle to put in this railway. And there's also sorts of issues about that too. But so those are kind of the two big things that people seem to worry about in terms of buying in Mexico. The one, catch to buying here is that it's really an all cash market still. There's, what I mean by that is not that you're carrying like bags of cash on the plane down to Mexico to pay for your property. We're doing everything with escrow accounts and wire transfers, but there's really no financing. Banks in the US, banks in Mexico, banks in the US and Canada are not offering traditional mortgage loans using properties here as collateral. And that is because it is very difficult to repossess property here. So if you are a lender and you loan money, let people get in the property and they default on the loan, it can be very difficult to get the property back. Possession is a very like 10/10 of the law here. So banks are not willing to take that risk and sellers are usually not willing to take that risk, that they would allow you in the home and then you default and they can't get you back out. That being said, there are some private investment groups that are now getting into the business of offering loans to Americans and Canadians in particular to buy property here under certain conditions. They're kind of more like bridge loans in the sense that they're shorter term and very high interest rates. I've never had a client use them, but they are becoming more and more available. And I think for some people that could be an option, especially if you want to make a purchase, but you don't want to withdraw some retirement funds yet because of tax consequences or something. I can see where a bridge loan like this might be a good option for a few years if you need to wait until you could pull it out or time you're pulling it out to minimize your tax consequences. So it kind of remains to be seen how popular those will be. So far, I don't know anyone I don't know another agent who's worked with one, and certainly none of our buyers have worked with one. So it's an all cash market. That's kind of the bad news. The good news about an all cash market is that it's a very stable market. So your investment is very stable, unlike in the US, which could have they had a mortgage crisis and people in Florida lost their shirts because their neighbor would sell for pennies on the, defaulted on their loan and sold for pennies on the dollar. Property values crashed. Here, it didn't affect us. It's an all cash market. There's not mortgages. You hold on to your property. There were, I see very few fire sales because the cost to maintain these properties is so low, so people are just willing to hold on until they can get it sold. And so we have this very kind of relatively slow moving, stable, but now rapidly increasing in value market. So in that sense, your investment is great here. We're not affected by so many other things. The big things that have affected other markets haven't hit us. COVID hit us the way, it did everyone else, and we thought, oh my God, in March 2020, I thought I have to get a job at I'm never gonna work again, we're never gonna sell anything, and then the market went on fire, like record-breaking years during and after COVID. So just like in other, I think, rural areas, less populated areas, people decided they wanted to move to Mexico and get away from everything. So, and that they could work remotely, which I think was very cool. So, yeah, so it's a good place to put your money. If you're wanting to sit it in and write it up, it's not super liquid in that properties don't move as quickly as they would in another like residential market, because it's really an all cash second home market still. So it usually takes about a year to sell a property. And that being said, sometimes we've sold them before we can even get them listed. So there's no complete rhyme or reason about it, but it is a little bit slower moving. Okay, somebody has to have a question by now because I need a drink of water.
It's Darcy.
Hi, Darcy.
I have a question. So we're here in Canada. We bank at the Royal Bank, and we have cash. We learned from our recent trip to Mexico about, hey, you want to work in pesos, not Canadian, not American. So we talked to our bank about, hey, what about this peso thing? They're like, well, we don't work in pesos. So one of the interesting questions we have is, if we have a lot of Canadian cash, but we want to start getting some money into pesos, watching the exchange rates, how do people do that? Like, because we're not set up with a Mexican bank. So how do people start that transition of, I want to be ready in cash?
So there is a bank called Wise, which is an online bank that a lot of people, I use it myself, which is a multi-currency bank. And so you can watch the rate, set up your Wise account, watch the rates. You have your Canadian and a Mexican peso account both there, and you can just move, when the rate is good, you move your money over into pesos and hold it. And so a lot of people don't even do that before they're gonna buy. At the time that they're gonna buy, they set up a Wise account and then use that to switch it to pesos. It's usually a better exchange rate than your bank will give you, and the transaction fees can be lower. That being said, Austin, correct me if I'm wrong, it's in Canadian, it's higher, right? Some of the transfer fees people found to be really high.
Yeah, I think Canada in particular, just in general, has much stricter financial regulations. And so we've seen, like with PayPal and Wise in general, our Canadian clients can have some more difficulties with it. And I think it is a little bit more expensive in comparison to the US. But I mean, we've also had clients who have successfully done it. I just know it tends to be more of a headache setting it up, but I think it's still possible for sure.
And I'm sure Wise isn't the only bank out there that's a multi-currency. I'm sure there's other, what are they called? Those money, like currency exchange banks? What are they called?
Yeah, I am familiar with that one. And so it's great. Just it's one I have heard of, one we have seen. So great that you're familiar with that one and I've had success with it.
Yeah. Rhonda, did you guys use Wise?
No, we actually, Darcy, we're also with the Royal Bank of Canada. Do you own property in Canada?
Yes.
What we ended up doing with the Royal Bank was went and got a home line of credit. And so it's basically like a mortgage or a line of credit against our primary property in Canada, which we had paid for. And the advantage of that is it's actually also title insurance for your Canadian property. So someone can't, and this is apparently one of them, you've probably heard about the cases in Ontario, where somebody basically went and did a fraudulent sale of a few properties. And then, like, they pretended that they owned the property, and then they pretended that they did sell it to somebody. And then the moving trucks pulled up to move into people's homes, and the people were like living there and they hadn't sold their property. So this is like title insurance in that nobody can go and register your title because the bank has a lien on it because of this line of credit. We use line of credit to buy our property down here in Mexico, and we elected to do that rather than cash in investments, because frankly, our investments were doing a lot better than the interest we were paying on the line of credit. So that is something to talk to the Royal Bank about, because that's what's worked really, really well for us. And then we just essentially had that line of credit transferred into our joint checking account. And then I think we used,
That was used to pay the deposit of the property,
Yeah,
the escrow.
I can't remember if you transferred directly from your bank or if you used another.
I think we did directly from our bank into the escrow account.
Oh,
Kim.
but you, I'm back, I should back up. You weren't buying in pesos. You bought in dollars, I think, didn't you?
Well, it was listed in US dollars.
Yeah,
Oh,
I think you paid dollars.
I think the transaction was processed in pesos though.
there were some fees that we paid.
Darcy,
for-
we've lived here for quite a while and I've used Wise like Kim and Austin do. And I've also used several others like xe.com. I've used PayPal, of course, the granddaddy. And then we've also over the years you could bring about 10,000 US dollars. I don't know what the conversion would be for Canadian, but whatever the maximum amount is for your country, we've brought in cash into the country of Mexico legally, and then take it to the bank or wait until a favorable rate from the bank locally can exchange the money for us. So we've done it lots of different ways, but I like Wise the best because I can it's cheap for me to do a transfer. I'm not doing a US transfer. My bank in the US requires that I'm physically present if I'm doing a transfer to a foreign bank. So it's not a foreign bank, it's basically a US bank. So I can do that online. So that makes it convenient for me living here to be able to get money out of my US bank and then get it converted on Wise when I'm ready. Lots
And
of
Dan
different-
just pointed out to me that our escrow, when we transferred it into an escrow account that was American. Because I remember thinking, this seems so strange that we're taking our Canadian dollars, transferring them into an American escrow account to buy a property in Mexico that we're buying off of Canadians. It just felt like it was beyond my ability to comprehend how this all worked, but that was actually what happened, was we transferred,
US.
so I guess it depends, Darcy, on, are you buying property that's in pesos, or are you buying property that's in US dollars?
Yeah, I think the question is how to get it in pesos and make sure that you can buy that way. But yeah, so we, yeah, Wise is the one that I hear most often for that. I hope we answered your question.
And I'd like to send you a referral for Wise because then I can get 1,400 pesos for that referral. Maybe Kim's gonna do that.
No, for sure, we'd be happy to, because it doesn't matter to us, right? We're gonna click on it anyway.
I did want to back up. I was just glancing at my notes. In terms of buying property here, oftentimes one of the other what is the word? It's not old wives' tale, but like the fake news is that, for a long time people would say, oh, you don't want to be in a trust. You need to open up a corporation. You have to have a Mexican corporation. And there was a time where a lot of lawyers were telling people that because it was fashionable and we didn't have the internet so much. And they were trying to steer people away from trusts and having them open corporations because they made money on corporations and they don't make money on trusts. But it was never good advice. And in fact, the government has been very clear in Mexico that if you are a foreigner buying residential property, you need to buy it in the trust. It's not appropriate to open a Mexican corporation. There are some very limited circumstances where you might want to open a corporation, and I would advise you to always talk to an attorney here and a tax advisor here, because the minute you open a corporation here, you're opening yourself up to monthly tax obligations that must be filed by a Mexican accountant. Like it's a huge Pandora's box. And as an American, I don't know if it's true as in a Canadian, ownership in a Mexican corporation also triggers a lot of IRS reporting requirements that aren't that fun. So you don't need to have a Mexican corporation. There's very limited circumstances where you might want one. If you think you want one, you know, make sure that the agent that you're working with is aware of that and can help get you some professional advice on whether that's something you want to do. But in general, you're gonna own it in a trust, not a corporation. Any questions on that? You guys are quiet tonight. Let's see. In terms of, you know, the buying process, I know many of you on here have already gone through it. It's similar somewhat to the process in the US and Canada. The biggest kind of difference here is in the looking for property, because we don't have an MLS here. There's no one source of reliable information on properties that are available. There's no source of comparative sale information. Sales information here is confidential. You cannot go to any site or government and ask them what your neighbor's house sold for. You can't even ask who owns the lot next to you. All that property ownership information is private, and property transfer information is private. So you're operating under a whole different environment than you are in US and Canada, where that information is very freely available. And that can make it tricky. And that's where it's really important to work with a local realtor who's been in the market for a long time, because I've been doing this for 12 years. I have my own database of what things are selling for, and that's how I can advise people whether something's a good price or not. It's just very difficult to think you can come in and start looking at, there's a website called Point2 Homes, which people often find if they Google Puerto Morelos real estate, because they're way up in the rankings. And looks like it's an MLS, but what it really is a website that anyone can post on any information. No one's checking it. You see the same property there at 10 different prices in 10 different locations. You know, none of the information is accurate, and it's not updated, and it's hardly ever removed. So all you have to have is a credit card to put something up on Point2 Homes. You don't have to be a seller. You don't have to be a real estate agent. It's not a reliable source of information. It's a place to start. It's a place to, you know, kind of see what's out there. But when you are getting serious, you're going to want to work with a reliable local agent who knows the market and can steer you away from fake listings or, you know, houses with known problems. It's just, it's kind of the Wild West. And so you really need an advocate in your corner and someone who's here on the ground to help you with that. But once you found what you're looking for, that's the exciting part. Then you're going to write up a written offer. That offer is going to include, you know, price and terms. If you need a delayed closing, we put that in the offer. Usually get a written counter offer. We negotiate. Once we come to an agreement, that's circulated for signatures. We get a closing cost estimate, and we start to set up an escrow account. This is my advice to you for the night. You always, always, always want to use an escrow account if you can. An escrow account is a trust account, if you're not familiar with it, where a third party bank basically holds the funds. The buyer and seller agree that the funds can be held in this account until closing. And it's really safety for both parties. It costs around $600 now, I think $650 maybe, but I would just consider it insurance, especially if you're a buyer, because if you give money to a seller here and don't close for 90 days, because that's about how long it's gonna take you to get the trust set up or the trust transferred. There's no guarantee the seller is gonna be there in 90 days. I mean, it's so much better to have used an escrow account to put your earnest money in. And then right before closing, you would put the rest of the funds in, and then at closing, the money is transferred out, usually on the same day to the seller. Okay, so that's my little rant on escrow agreements. You put your earnest money into escrow. Notice that we did not submit money with the offer. The offer is just a good faith offer. You come to kind of a gentleman's agreement, get the escrow set up, get your closing costs. We'll hire the attorneys that are gonna close the deal. And then they'll do the due diligence, make sure there's no liens on the property, make sure the people that say they own it really own it. Then they're gonna create the formal contract, which is in English and Spanish. And that contract is what's binding. So once you sign that contract, there's a penalty if you withdraw on either side. If the seller fails to close and if the buyer fails to close, there's a penalty. Once that contract is signed, then the lawyers get to work, the Fideicomiso bank gets to work. If you're setting up a new trust, they're gonna request a permit. There's all this background stuff that happens, and you're gonna be very nervous because it's like crickets. Like there's a flurry of activity in the beginning, and then there's a long stretch of really silence. And then a few weeks before closing, we start to gear up again. And that's just the pace at which things work here. There's so many moving pieces to a transaction that it's kind of like herding cats. So there's like the closing attorney, the notario, the Fideicomiso bank, the federal government agency that issues the permit, the municipal agency, the state agency. All of these people are doing their part to come together to bring you your closing. We used to be able to do them in 30 days, believe it or not. That was great. Now it's really more like 60 to 90. But you're not forced, like when you write your offer, you don't have to say, we're gonna close on this date. There's no way to predict when you're gonna close. The process goes along. As we start to see that we're nearing the end, the parties start to talk about when they can all be at the closing table for closing. And then we set a date for closing and everyone arrives. You have to be at the closing table to sign in front of the notario, or you can have a power of attorney and someone could appear for you, but a physical body needs to appear on closing day in front of the notario. We do a final walkthrough before closing where you make sure everything is there that you thought you were buying and that everything's working, and then you get the keys at closing, and then you have a house or a condo or land. I guess there's no keys there, but yeah, so it's a very similar process in some ways, in other ways it's gonna feel very foreign to you. All right, what questions do you have about that? Help me.
Hey, Mom.
Hello.
Uh-huh.
Oh, sorry. We had a question in the chat about whether or not people are required to carry hurricane insurance. I was going to field it, but I figured it might be better handled by you.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's no mortgage lender, so no one can require anything of you. You don't have to have insurance, any kind of insurance at all. Most condo complexes have, they insure the structure. But you choose whether you want to insure your individual unit, the contents of your unit. And I would say, I think less than half of the people that I know, I don't have insurance on my house. I don't know many people that do here simply because it's all concrete construction, it's concrete block. And so there's not a whole lot that can happen. Certainly if you have big, beautiful windows or you're closer to the beach, then you would consider, like Caroline, I know you had an insurance claim, which went very well, but you can tell that story. And then you would do it. I have a 1-level house a few blocks back and it's been through 3 hurricanes with no damage. So, a lot of people found after Hurricane Wilma, which was the biggest hurricane on record until the last few years, and it set over this area for 3 days, it was really a biblical event. Many, even condo complexes, dropped their insurance after that because the damage was really water damage and they couldn't even meet the deductible. So a lot of people opted to self-insure or just drop the insurance altogether. It's really up to you whether you want to do it. The good news is insurance here is so much more affordable than you can imagine, mostly because this is not a litigious society and there's no liability insurance. There's very little people are not suing you for things that are happening on the property, and so the rates are much lower than you would imagine. I think I sold two oceanfront homes, and I think, and like multi-million-dollar oceanfront homes, and I think the insurance there was $4,000 a year, which I don't think is crazy for if you're gonna have to build a couple $1 million home again. But I think when I got my quote, it was like 700 a year just for my little house. I don't know, Caroline, you had a recent experience with insurance,
I think
so.
we pay 2,100 a year for our insurance, Kim, and yeah, we live a block off the beach. And so all these, sometimes the big winds, even the winds we've had recently, you know, can affect our property. But I've had to put a couple claims in for broken glass on my balconies, and a palapa got blown off, and my Tanaco got damaged one year. So, you know, periodically these storms can be pretty significant when they do hit us, and I'm glad I have my insurance. It's helped me a couple times. But
Awesome.
it's not that expensive for, you know, I mean, I guess if I did the math, it might be just as much for me to just replace those things without having the insurance. But with the cost of goods going up around here, it's hard to know, you know,
Yeah.
it's one of those things, but it's your own choice, I think
Yeah.
is really the key, yeah.
Yeah. And someone asked average cost, it's all depending on your property value, right? They're gonna come out and do an evaluation on the property, and so I don't have an average cost, I'm
And
sorry.
your contents, and mine has theft as well. And if something's outside the house versus inside the house, so they have to come and look at everything and evaluate everything.
And we have insurance agents that we work with that we always refer our buyers to if they want to talk about insurance. Donna, did you have an insurance? Is she still here? There she is. Yeah. No? Okay. I was thinking that you.
Nope, I don't have it at all. I'm far enough off the ocean that I don't get as much as Caroline gets or you get. And like you said, it's mostly cinder and block, so it wouldn't pay me to have it. It'd be cheaper to replace the couple windows that could break.
Yeah. So I forgot to mention Donna is a great resource here as well, because Donna has bought, built, and rented.
Bought,
So she's
bought, built, and rented.
yeah, she's covered it. Caroline has Portside and Colonia, so she's good at answering questions about that.
Bought, built,
I've got
and rented
apartments, but
as well,
Oh, and you rented, that's right, and remodeled, which
and remodeled.
that's a whole other ball of wax. So I see there's a question about closing costs there. Thank you for hopping on that, because I need to get that out as well. The closing costs here are paid primarily by the buyer, and they are kind of steep. The good news is the ongoing costs are low, but they get you on the closing costs. So at the $300,000 range, they're around 8 to 9% of the purchase price. As you, in the lower ranges, it's a higher percentage because some of those are just flat fees. At the like $1 million range, they're about 6%, but at like 150,000 and lower, they're closer to 11 to 12%, I think. But that includes, so what we're quoting includes everything. That's the cost of an attorney. You must have an attorney. They don't cost a lot here, and it's just an insurance policy for you. It's the cost of escrow. It's the purchase acquisition taxes. It's the cost of the notario, which I'll explain in a moment. It is the cost to set up or transfer the trust, plus the first year's annual trust fee. What am I forgetting? All the purchase acquisition taxes, all the registration fees. I'm rolling all that into that percentage. You don't have any costs outside of that. The seller is going to have some closing costs. They're going to have to pay some certificates of no debt and things, municipal things like that. They're going to pay the real estate commission, and they're going to pay their capital gains tax. What was I just going to go back to? Somebody help me with my train of thought about the closing costs. Sorry. Did I cover the closing costs completely? All right.
Yeah, you mentioned that it's fielded by the buyers, and it's typically pretty high in comparison.
There's, the trust fee, that's what I was gonna come back to. There is a fee to the trust. So you set when you buy property, you're gonna pay to either set up or transfer the trust, it's a couple $1,000s. And then there's an annual trust fee, which is around $500 a month for most banks right now, and yeah, you pay that once a year on like the anniversary date of your purchase. Your ongoing costs will also include property taxes, which are very, very low. They're like 0.0028 times the purchase price. I'm sure there's a better way to say that, a more financially astute way, but and if you pay them in December, you get a discount of, I think, 15% now. So ongoing costs of maintaining a property are very low. They get you on the closing costs. And the biggest chunk of that is 3.3% purchase acquisition taxes in Puerto Morelos. Any questions about that?
I love Joe's question though in the chat. Are there building codes for builders?
Well, there are not in the same way that I think you're used to in the US or Canada. You do have to have your plans approved to get a construction license. There are some inspections that happen. Well, Caroline just went through this, and Donna did too. I mean, you guys can talk about it. I don't think it's the same kind of code, whatever, holding people to codes that we think of.
It just depends on also where you build, because some of your gated communities do have specific, I don't want to say codes, but rules, and they can deny or accept what you want to do, but they have specific rules that you have to follow in some of the gated communities. I'm sure that the codes are different for outside of the community.
Mhm.
And Joe, so you know, I'm a corporate girl. I like things inside the lines. I like to understand everything that I'm doing right up front.
Yeah.
I would use words to describe code as fluid or dynamic. Or it's a moving target. It's very challenging to make a plan and then stick to that plan throughout the course of a build, or in my case, I've done remodels because it's very fluid. One guy will want to see the plans this way, another guy will want to see it this way. Are there standards? Yes, you have to have permits, and you can only be this high or this tall or this whatever, unless, you know, we have a special deal on the side, then you can go outside the permit. So it is fluid or dynamic is how I would say.
Yeah, but
Well,
they are making sure the structure is sound. You know, you do have to
Oh, for
present a
sure.
plan, you have to have a foundation, you know, we're on
Yeah.
sand. So they are, you know, and it's concrete block, which is very safe. So they are making sure that you're doing that. And the building codes changed after Hurricane Wilma dramatically. So
Yeah. Talking from a guy who wrote out Irma Maria on the island, and also Irma Maria with property in Florida. So I'm just a little paranoid.
yeah,
But
So-
you're a blockhouse guy though. I mean, it's all
Yeah.
block in Caribbean.
Well, the house in St. about 45 years old, and it,
Huh.
you know, went through Hugo, which was like a disaster here on island. So it, you know, it was pretty hairy though. It was not
Thanks.
fun.
Yeah, it's interesting because after Wilma, there was nothing for 15 years that hit this coast. And so I used to not be able to answer the question about hurricanes. People are like, how does the hurricane work when you're there? I don't know. But
What year?
in 2020,
Oh, what year was
had-
Wilma?
pardon me,
What year was Hurricane Wilma?
2005.
Oh, okay.
So 2020, we had two. Was that the year we had two?
Yeah.
Yeah, like in a row, Delta and Zeta. And then in 2021, we had one. And so now I'm a pro. And it's not that bad. It is loud, which that's
Did you
scary.
lose power at your place?
Well, they turn it off. They turn off the power before the hurricane gets here. So I think we were out. I don't think any of those times we were out very long.
We were 83 days here.
Oh my
Oh,
God,
no.
no, we don't have that, yeah. Yeah, that's a lot.
How reliable is the grid there? Electric grid? Is it pretty reliable?
It is now, yeah. They've made
Okay.
huge improvements in Puerto Morelos in the last 10 years. I mean, occasionally there are outages, but not like it used to be, yeah.
Are the power lines underground or are they on like telephone poles?
On the port side, closest to the beach, they are partly underground. They
Yeah.
started in the square and they're moving out from there. In the gated communities further from the beach, they're all underground, which is great. That's one of the things I love about them. And then in the Colonia, are there any are those buried? No.
Yeah, Elizabeth's in the street in front of her, Telmex and
They're
everything's
buried?
on
Okay,
the
yeah.
sidewalk.
Yeah, it's the port side is the near the beach is weirdly where they're above ground.
Worst.
Maybe just where. Yeah. Okay.
Did somebody else have a question?
Yes, I have a question, Ms. Kim. I've been a long time YouTube watcher of you,
Hi.
of Runaway, so yeah.
Oh, thank you.
We'll be moving down perhaps
Awesome.
in April or May, and look forward to you showing us the inventory there. And my wife, she's a Mexican citizen, Mexico City, and so I'm retiring early, and we'll be moving down there then, and just look forward to it. With that being the case, her being a Mexican citizen, will we be able to, Puerto Morelos is our first choice because, we've done our research and that's where I really want to live. So with her being a Mexican citizen, we will not have to use the bank for purchases, or how would I come in there, or would I be able to be included in that process? Just curious.
Yeah, if she's the only one on title, you don't need a trust, but if anyone who is not Mexican is gonna be on title, you do have to have it in a trust. And I will tell you that most of my clients who are in that situation choose to do the trust. Only because if you have children that are, if you're, if you have people that you would like the property to go to, if you both pass away, who aren't Mexican citizens, it's going to be much easier to pass it to them in the trust than going through probate. But it's a personal decision because it is more expensive to have the trust. It's a couple $1,000s up front and then it's $500 a year afterward that.
Okay, thank you. That answers the question.
Sure. And she could protect you if only her name is on the title, you could have a will in Mexico, you could protect it that way.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Look forward to
Of
further
course.
discussion.
Welcome. That's exciting. What other questions? Oh, Natasha was asking about Texas. So not Texas, taxes. Taxes are due every month here. So the reason you get a discount in December is you're paying the whole year in advance. So they're giving you a nice discount so they don't have to collect taxes every month.
And also, if you're over 65, you get an automatic 50% off.
Oh,
Boom.
do you have to
Oh,
have
yeah.
that card or do you?
Do you have to have the Inapon card?
I don't know.
I
No.
can't tell you for sure because they're no longer giving the Inapon to anybody but Mexican nationals. They no longer do it. Gary already had his from before, but he's never had to show it when you got your taxes renewed. You did. Okay, he says he did show it, but since he's over 65 every year, it's half the price, no matter if you pay it in December or the next year. It's an automatic 50% off.
That's nice.
Yeah, yeah.
You go to the SEPI plan website and check it out.
Oh, the SEPA plan website has that information on it.
Okay. SEPI plan, SEF.
SEPI.
Oh, SEPI.
Oh, SE.
FI.
Is it FI? I thought it was
Yeah,
PI.
I think it's
Okay.
SEPI plan.
Gary says FI. I say
Okay.
PI.
All right, thank you.
Donna, is that only for Mexicans, did you say?
No, we're permanent residents. But a few years ago, he got the Enapum, am I saying that right? Card for people that are 65 and over, so we get those discounts. But even without that, like I noticed things like I actually went to Chichen Itza last week for the first time and got in completely free because I had my driver's license that showed I lived in Mexico. I had my CURP, which showed I was a resident, and I was over 60. So they said, you're free.
Something to look forward to.
Yeah,
my
so there's a lot of
Enapum
little
is-
things that you can get for free or reduce the buses, prescriptions, any of the state parks, anything that begins at the state parks, they do all of that kind of stuff. The ferry, a lot of the ferries will give you discounts if you're over a certain age and are a resident. So just having my driver's license and my residency card shows that I'm a resident, so they give a lot of discounts.
Nice. I was
Do you-
getting kind of depressed about almost being 60, but now there is an upside.
Do you
Well,
need a
I lied just to get the discounts.
Sorry, Joe, go ahead.
do you need a driver's license in Mexico, or can your stateside license work?
Your stateside license will work, but you might want to get it for other reasons. I mean, now, yeah, I mean, you get some discounts if you have it.
Okay.
There's no tests.
Plus, it's one of your main forms of identification. If you're going to open a bank account, if you're going to register a car in your name, the driver's license just gives you that other form of identification and proof that you do live here, you are a resident here, you do own here, that kind of stuff.
Okay. Thank
So
you.
I did want to cover just super quickly, because I think we're getting close to the end. So to buy property in Mexico, you don't have to have you can just be here on a tourist visa. You don't have to have a resident visa at all. There are, kind of 3 different statuses: tourist, temporary resident, and permanent resident visas. The temporary resident visa is, well, it's changed a bit. It's historically was 1 year at a time, but I've heard now you can get 1 year and then you can get the next 3 years looped into one visa, and then you would automatically go to permanent resident after that. Or you could just go directly to permanent resident, which is what I would always try to do if I were anybody doing this now, because once you get permanent resident, you don't have to keep going back at all. It's already done. And if you buy property, you really want to be looking towards getting a permanent resident visa, because when you sell it, that visa assists you in qualifying for some very big exemptions from the capital gains tax. And so while you don't need it when you buy the property, by the time you sell it, we really recommend that you have a permanent resident visa. There's some other requirements too, but the big one is the permanent resident visa. And it doesn't affect your citizenship anywhere else. It doesn't affect your residency in any other country. It really, the only thing it does is give you a status here in Mexico, which is frankly beneficial. So if you can qualify for it, definitely do it. And I will plug, next February 9th is our next Runaway Realty or Runaway Wednesday Zoom, and we are going to have our immigration expert Millie Arceo here, and she's going to talk about the immigration rules and the changes in the rules and how foreigners can get started on their immigration process. I do want to back up to the other thing people often ask me about permanent resident visa holders. Well, what if I only want to be there a month, a year or something? That's fine. There's no requirement that you have to stay in Mexico for any length of time. There's no even requirement that you enter Mexico every year. Once you achieve the status or are granted the status, there's no requirements after that. You have to do something when you go to the airport to leave the country, but that's it. You don't have to be here any length of time or be out of the country any length of time. So that's nice. Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, it's Darcy.
Uh-huh.
So a question my wife and I have is we're trying to figure out which of the little towns we'd like to purchase property in. We were just in Playa over Christmas with our 20-year-old daughters, and that's a great town for 20-year-olds, but really not for us. So we're definitely looking at the smaller communities, and we're just trying to figure that out. One of the things we're also trying to figure out is when to engage with a realtor. So we understand the value of doing so. So we're trying to figure out this balance of, do you just literally start going to the little towns on your own? Or if we know that Puerto Morelos is one of the towns that, you know, we're interested in, is it better to engage with a realtor before you even start like looking at things? Or from your perspective, what's the best way to do it, or what would you recommend?
Well, I will say, first of all, I do think, you know, every little town on this coast, for example, has a different personality. They're really very different. And so you probably do want to visit and just get a sense of it, the vibe. It's never too early to start working with an agent. We have many clients, it's a multiple year process. Maybe the first year we're driving around, seeing the different neighborhoods, seeing the types of properties that are available. Maybe we go see a few. Then you go back and get more serious and come back the next year and you have a budget, you know, it's a multiple, not many people arrive in Puerto Morelos, or I would think anywhere, and just buy right away. You're usually building up to that, and then we just stay in touch throughout the years. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. There are some people who just arrive and buy. But yeah, we're happy to, I mean, a lot of our job is helping you understand the different parts of our village, what it's like to live here, you know, it's so different from, you know, you're not moving to another state or another province. This is a whole different place. So we consider that part of our job to help you get comfortable with that and embrace that part of it as well. So I don't think it's ever too early. I would say that I think it's best to work in each community. I know it can seem weird. You might want to have different agents that are really specializing. If you start to narrow it down, work with an agent in that community, not someone who does Cancun to Chetumal, because they don't have any insight to help you. They can drive you, but they're drivers. They're not going to give you any insight or any real good guidance on what the values are and will be. So, and if you need some referrals, for other areas, we have agents in our real estate association that I'm happy to refer. We work with other agents all the time.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Okay, guys, come on. Anyone?
I have a question, I don't know if it's really related to buying, but I guess kind of. We're kind of looking for, I don't know, the most walkability as far as neighborhoods, not necessarily on the beach, but on the Colonia side. Any recommendations or insight?
Austin, Danny, you want to pick that up?
Well, La Colonia is great. La Colonia can take you, like, we have a gorgeous house right now in Transatlántico that's really well located. You are right in the middle of the two main avenues of La Colonia, that is Cetina Gasca, where all like the markets are, and then Timon, that all of the businesses are. Like you can walk half a block and you have a gym, a coffee shop, an ice cream shop, the fruit stand, the hardware store, like walk and great restaurants. I think that La Colonia there, like the location for this Transatlántico house is premium if you would like to have like a small town feel type of, like I can walk everywhere and get my coffee in the morning and my fruit and come back, and that you also get that in the port side. But I think more so than living in any of the gated communities or in the Selva Escondida, that it's a little bit farther away in the jungle. So I think La Colonia has everything.
Mm-hmm. I do think that, you know, as they are building more further out, the businesses are coming. So
Yeah.
Right now, when you, like Austin lives in Selva Escondida, and it's kind of a hike to get, well, the best taco place is actually pretty close to there. But you have to, you know, you're walking probably 10, 15 minutes. But the businesses are going to come to you. The more people that live there, and I don't know, Rhonda, you guys can speak to this as well. I think they're coming to you, and so it's going to become even more walkable and accessible. There's a great public transportation service, the Colectivo, that is running all the time, that services all those areas as well. So you can hop on a little bus, little van, and get over to the restaurants and shops and everything pretty quickly.
Biking too. Biking
yeah.
is super easy.
Yeah.
Even in Selva Escondido, where you feel like you might be further away for stuff, you're maybe a 5-minute bike into
Oh,
wherever
okay.
pretty
I
much
didn't
you
think about
need
that.
to be.
Mhm.
And that's a fun way to explore La Colonia in general. I mean, the beauty is Puerto Morelos in general is still so small. So, Selva Escondido is on the edge of the jungle, but it's a 10-minute drive, 15-minute drive to the beach.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can probably bike to the beach in 25 to 30 minutes, depending on what route you take. So,
And just in the 2 years we've been here, we've seen more and more businesses getting happening in the north end of town. We're not as far out as Selva, but we're far out compared to some of the other communities, and we walk and bike everywhere. I mean, we just, this point, felt no need to have a car. Hop on the Colectivo. We went down for groceries yesterday, and we hopped on the Colectivo to get there, and we just bring a taxi back because, you know, it's sure a lot cheaper than owning a car. So we walk and bike all over the place. And I mean, we're not, you know, super athletic, you know, gonna go bike 50-kilometer type people at all, but it is very walkable. Austin's definitely right that way. But we are finding more and more businesses are coming out here, and I suspect there will be more and more happening as well. I mean, at some point, someone's gonna come and say, you know, Puerto Morelos really needs another grocery store.
Yep.
A Walmart.
Well, I'd rather see a Mega, to be honest, because it's Mexican owned,
Well-
but anyway. You know, but I mean, they're gonna need something like that at some point in this town, because, you know, that's to me one of the biggest frustrations is. When you go for groceries, you don't ever go on a weekend, don't ever go on the 15th or the 30th when people have just been paying here. We just,
Don't go on Saturday.
Yeah, don't go
night.
on payday.
Oh, Rhonda. We didn't have any grocery stores when we moved here, did we?
Me
Kim?
too. Yeah. There was
Exactly.
grocery store
There
for
you
beds.
go.
yes, we're spoiled that way.
You had to drive to Cancun or Playa.
Yeah.
Well, then you would need a car.
Well, yeah, or we just carpooled or, yeah.
But I
But
did want
yeah,
to say to Jill, there's lots of neighborhoods, like Danny was talking about Translantico, fabulous street, really nice. But there's also smaller houses and stuff. My daughter's in Villas Las Playas that Kim actually sold me 5 years ago or so, and now my daughter lives there, and with her family, my granddaughter and everything. Adorable neighborhood. They
Yeah.
didn't have a clinic, but now there's a 24-hour clinic at the end of their street. Mariachi Tacos just opened up at the end of their street. I mean, everything like Kim's talking about comes to you. It's all walkable right in that area. Primary school, the football field, everything is just right there for them.
Thanks.
yeah, that is one of the things I love in general about Mexico is I think, you know, and maybe I'm from Colorado, which is a relatively newer like state even, but maybe this is true in other countries, but like because things weren't so car based, every little neighborhood has what you need. There's like a butcher shop and the vegetable shop and the, you know, you can get around to those places because they're not assuming that everyone has a car. So I think that's cool. Like there's little shops in the middle of these neighborhoods, which is I think is really sweet and nice. Yeah, what else? Any other questions?
We have a lady who sets out a 6x9 table out on the tope, not far from your office, and she sells in the summer, she'll sell
Yeah.
radishes and onions and carrots and stuff. And you just like naturally just pull over and get carrots and keep going. Or we have a truck that drives around, you know, and they're plátano, piña,
Mango,
piña.
mango,
Today
mango.
were selling mangoes.
Yeah,
Driving
mango,
Yeah,
mango.
they
around,
were selling mangoes.
It's just, you know, I mean, it's just
Yeah.
sweet and different. So I do love my chedraui, don't get me wrong. So happy to have my chedrauis, plural. But, you know, I also really like those smaller little things that Kim's talking about, the little tiny vendors. It's fun. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have a question, Glenn?
I do. Actually, my wife and I got a Airbnb in Playa del Carmen for a month, and we're coming down on Sunday. And we would love to, at some point, maybe take a look at some properties in the Puerto Morelos, area and hook up with somebody from your, agency
Awesome.
to, maybe show us some of the areas and, what's
You're
available.
gonna stay for a few days?
We got, Airbnb and Playa.com. We're gonna be there for 31 days.
Ah,
Awesome.
So we're excited about that. It's the first time
Yeah.
we've ever done anything like this, but yeah, we'll still be working, doing remote work, but not up in Boston, which is
Yeah.
great.
Not freezing. Yeah.
I just
Or
dropped my
Monday night on the
email.
rooftop.
What's
I
that?
just-
Monday night on the rooftop.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we don't have a car, so I don't know what we're gonna do yet, but we're just gonna take the ADO from Cancun and then a taxi. We're staying in the Mayakoba area.
Oh, okay.
But yeah,
Oh.
I'd love to, to arrange once we get here at some point, to get in touch with you guys to take a look at what's out there in Puerto Morelos.
Sure, I just dropped my email, although your name looks familiar. Have you contacted?
I had emailed you once before, I think a couple of weeks ago, and asking if you were still doing these Runaway Wednesday things.
Okay.
And so yeah, that might have been where you can remember my
Okay.
name from.
Yeah, let's get in touch. I don't know if Sunday will work, but we can definitely get something put together. And I did want to offer too, because I know it's harder in bigger groups. If you want to book a call or a Zoom, like a private Zoom chat, we're happy to do that as well to explore, other questions that you guys might have. We're happy to make ourselves available for that. And we're going to continue with this series, but the next one is February 9th, and that will be really only about immigration. Millie's awesome, and she puts together a nice program in explaining all the ins and outs of getting a visa here. So if you're interested in that, definitely tune in or at least register, and then we'll send you the video afterwards. And then I actually don't know when the next, I should have written that down. I don't know when the one is after that, but there'll be another one in February that'll be more like this in terms of general questions about owning and buying property and about living in Puerto Morelos. Anyone else? I don't want to cut anyone off.
Kim,
Uh-huh.
Go
I
ahead.
had a question about internet and some of the private developments. How are they all good? Or I know Portside's generally pretty good, but how is
Yeah,
internet
no.
access?
Donna and I live in Punta Vista, and we still do not have optic fiber. Like we have good internet. It's expensive internet. It's satellite internet. There's a company called PVR that they use GigNet towers, and it's pretty good. But we still do not have like the high speed underground thing that the people in La Colonia have. I know that. I don't know if Punta Arena has already had it, but it's
Yes, it does.
they already have it.
Yes.
We've like here. I've been part of the neighborhood committee, and we've talked to Telmex a lot. And because Punta Vista is still not as developed as the other gated communities, Telmex still thinks that it's not a good business to get in right now, even though there's going to be 300 houses here eventually. So I know that here, I don't know about the other one. Regatta, I know that they have it, but I don't know the aldeas, how they are connected still.
I don't think they have it yet.
Yeah.
So
Because
we have, we bought a condo in Selva Escondida, an investment condo, and we have Starlink there and have Austin can speak to it. I think he's been really happy with it. And was so easy to set up. They ship it to you. You don't have to wait for someone to show up at your house. I didn't do it, but Austin did it, installed it.
Yeah, super easy. And Selva, by the way, is also they're just getting fiber as well. For both. Selva 2 will have fiber by the time it's developed, and then Selva 1 is just now getting it piped in. So it's optional, I think.
Yeah, I don't know about like Palma Real and does Quinta Moreta have high fiber optic?
Yeah, we have fiber optic. I think we just got fiber optic in down at Alvarado as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think it's coming. It's
coming
near you. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think somebody else had a question. No.
I just sent a question. Is there public water there, or is it like cisterns, or how do you get water?
It's public, yeah. It's coming from, well, a few different ways. So in the port side, it's Aguacan is the name of our utility. In the gated communities, they are on wells and they have their own wastewater treatment plants. Those are I'm talking about the gated communities that are on the beach side of the highway, which is Punta Arena, Punta Vista, Regata, all the aldeas. In the Colonia, they also have Aguacan as a utility and they have a wastewater treatment plant. In further out, like, well, Zona Urbana, which I don't know if you're interested in, most of those people, they don't have public water. They are on wells, or you truck the water in and have a cistern.
Okay.
Selva 2 is starting to deliver in April.
April.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was late to the chase on that,
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
but I just sent it in.
Yeah. Which I think there's some Selva 2. Linda, did you guys get in Selva 2? Linda, yeah. And
Yeah,
Alfieri's, Robert's here.
Yes, we bought in Selva too.
Awesome. I think those are gonna be so nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're excited. We have been hearing from a few other people that have been buying there as well, so.
Yeah. Pickleball courts. Everyone's gonna be happy.
Oh, I hope
That's
there's
the
not
selling
lots
point.
of people from everywhere else lining up for them.
Yeah. Oh, well, it'll be private. They won't be able to get in. Private pickleball. Punta Arena just put a pickleball court in.
And Punta Vista has its own underground league.
Pickleball Street.
Yeah, they closed Little Canada to play there. Yeah.
Yes, it's wonderful.
Mhm.
Funny. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us. I'm sorry, I feel like I was a little discombobulated to start off, but I'm rusty.
You did great.
Let's go 2024.
Yay.
You can join us in February 9th. If you would like to set up a Zoom, just one-on-one, let us know. I dropped my email in this chat. It's just kim@runawayrealty.com and we can get that set up. I want to plug our resources page. We redid our website last year and I love our resources page. We've got some great buyer resources there, frequently asked questions. Also on our website are all of our House Hunters International episodes about Puerto Morelos, which is a kind of a fun watch if you're sitting in somewhere freezing and you want to see our beautiful town. Those are all on our website as well. So check it out. Thank you so much. Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Donna. Thank you, Danny and Austin. Thank you everyone for joining. Rhonda, thank you so much. And
have a good night,
hope
guys.
to see you
Thank
guys
you.
in Puerto Morelos.
Everybody, hope to see some of you around.
Yeah.
Bye.
Have a good night.